Guys, they're from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Clint Black of Carolina Gaming Tables, as well as you're also the brand manager over at Pinnacle for Savage Worlds.
I'm the Core Rules brand manager. Yes. Hold on. Then Wonder Woman arrived.
Happens. These are the things that happen when we go live.
Yeah, of course. It only happens. Yeah, I'm the. So the Core Rules brand manager kind of sounds odd because most people are brand managers over a line on a setting. So my brand is actually the rules. So what I do is I oversee the core rule books when we work on them. And then the companion books that we do that are basically setting books to help people build their own settings. Like the Fantasy Companion, Horror Companion, we've done a Sci-Fi Companion and Superpowers Companion. But then I also work on all the rules and all the other books that we put out there to ensure that they merge seamlessly with our core rule book. So in a way, I get to work on every book we put out there. It's kind of a dream job.
Nice. So there's no danger of getting bored. You're constantly having new things, new toys to play with. So I guess we'll go into a little bit of background here. I met you at Gen Con. We were both at the Geek and Sundry party. And we had some really good conversations. You introduced yourself, and we were talking about Savage Worlds, and I was just like I was saying before we got started here. That's one of the ones that are on my list of to play games that I haven't gotten around to. But the thing that actually really stood out to me about our conversation was we're actually talking about kids and teens and playing role-playing games. And you were telling me about, I don't know if it was a birthday party or a party something for one of your children, I believe your daughter maybe.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like there, fly on the wall style, listening to the kids talk and interact with each other, and they're talking about gaming.
Yeah, it was kind of marvelous, really. It was my younger daughter's 16th birthday, and two of the kids had shown up early, and they were in my living room, and I came in carrying stuff for the party, and I went and set it down in the kitchen, and I walk around, and I walk inside, and there's a boy in her high school who is running a Savage World Star Wars game, and there's a girl who is one of her best friends who is playing in that game as well, and is getting ready to run a D&D 5e game herself, which is awesome. I love seeing more women coming into gaming, because I've gotten used to playing role playing with women for years. It seems weird not to me, but I'm sitting there, and they're 16-year-olds, they're high school students, and I walk in, and the conversation that they're having is about how much combat to actually put into the game so it doesn't detract from the story. And the boy who is getting ready to play in this other girl's game is saying, 16-year-old boy in high school is saying that it doesn't really matter so much to him. He'll play whatever kind of support character the group needs, because he's more interested in just role-playing his character than killing stuff in combat. And I'm looking at these kids going, not only are you role-playing and gaming and you're interacting with multiple systems, because most of us in that time we had one system that we played until we found a different one. You're getting all these different experiences playing different systems, but you're having conversations most role players don't have till they get into their 20s. I mean, you're already talking about story and and balancing combat and story and being more interested in role playing your your character than how many orcs you can fit in a 10 by 10 room, and stuff like that. Now it was thrilling to be that fly on the wall and hear that. And a big part of it, we mentioned that last night, but especially since it was a Geek and Sundry party, was the girl was talking about how part of her inspiration came from a D&D show that she was watching, a live stream show that she watched or on YouTube. And I'm not familiar which one it was. I think Adventure Zone or something. One of my girls was telling me. Anyway, and the boy is sitting there asking, talking to her about, well, have you ever seen Titan's Grave, Will Wheaton's RPG show? And she's like, no. And he goes on to mention, well, it has Laura Bailey from Critical Role in it. And the girl legitimately goes, from what? I'm like, wait, we have so much out there to draw from. I mean, these kids it's not even the biggest names out there and on, live playing stuff. It's like all this other stuff that are impacting, these kids. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing, how many viewership you've got on your show, you're probably out there impacting kids and they're playing better games, That's awesome.
That part is a little scary because we kind of aim for a PG-13-ish, and it's gotten a little bit better since one of our members has kind of gone his own way, but which was my brother. And me and him tend to kind of delve into more of the adult stuff and use more adult language. But we were at a gaming convention, and a lot of these guys have probably have heard me tell this story, but when there was an 11-year-old kid that's like, I watch your stuff, and I was like, wow. So like that going forward kind of does color how we do things, and we try and go, well, maybe we should change things up a little bit and taking that into consideration. And and I'm looking at the father going, you let him watch our stuff. I can't believe you. You're horrible.
Yeah. Well, that's a consideration Pinnacle's always kind of had in its stuff. And we have basically our soft rule is that all of our settings and all of our stuff, we try to keep it PG-13. And it's not because you can't run any of our settings with more adult themes, but it's a case of, if you're an adult, you already know how to add that. For kids, they can pick it up and they're not being inundated with it. It's not, right in the face. But, it's like, having, raised, two girls now myself. And it's one thing, we know as parents, and I think most parents out there know, is there's nothing you can really say in front of kids that they haven't already heard on a school bus, and it's just a matter of letting them know how to deal with the words they hear and, some of the stuff that goes on with. So every once in a while, you might flub up in front of a kid, but you still, as long as they're good kids, and generally gaming kids are great kids, I think you'd understand.
When you're rolling funny shaped dice or pulling cards, you don't have time for that other stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
In my household, I always say the kids should learn that stuff where they're supposed to, on the playground.
Right.
Not for me.
Yeah. Mine definitely learned it on the bus. They informed us of where you sit on the school bus, so you could stay away from the kids. The kids in the back of the bus are, the ones that we'll just sit as close to the front as we can, because back there's a whole different language going on. Yeah.
But going back to, kids are just so much more savvy nowadays. When it comes to gaming, well, just in general, they just have so much information at their fingertips. And my oldest is actually 16, and he games with us. He still isn't really much of a role player, but I just know from my personal experience that, one, like listening to you talk and some of where some of the other kids are now, is they're light years beyond where we were at that age, or me personally, because at that point it's like you said, it's like, how many orcs can you fit in a 10x10 room? And you're just kicking indoors. There was no getting to the dungeon. You started at the dungeon. It was just a different play style, and everything we did, you did in a bubble.
Yeah. Back in both of our days, I'm sure the Caves of Chaos were inside this dome, and there was a keep outside that dome, on this place. But out in the Borderlands, there was nothing else except the Caves of Chaos and that little keep, and you really didn't have to worry about it, because all the keep was where you went to get more stuff to go back in to the caves.
Or sell your stuff. And damn it, that's all we needed back then.
That's right. That's right. Get off my dice, kids today.
So, kind of moving on, Savage Worlds, for someone who hasn't played it, definitely interested. I'm always interested in experiencing new RPGs. I actually backed the Savage Rifts. I just haven't delved into it. There's always more games than I have time. So what do you think the selling points are for Savage Worlds?
Well, we always use the tagline "Fast, Furious, Fun" for Savage Worlds, trying to keep things moving. But one of the keys is really that last one, is trying to keep the game fun and enjoyable. One of the things about Savage Worlds that I like, that we kind of try to stay focused on, is there are two main sections to what we're playing. It's a role-playing game. So there's role-playing and there is a game involved. There are some game aspects to it. The point is, the mechanics, people talk about how they can't be immersive and they might bring you out or whatever. That's a lot more forgivable if those mechanics are fun. So one of the things with Savage Worlds that we have is our dice ace, or use another term, they explode. So if you roll the highest on a die, you re-roll and add again. So every time you roll the dice, there's a chance of rolling something extraordinary. Or even if you have, because all of our traits, that's both attributes and skills, are rated in die types from D4 to D12. And generally our target number is a 4, so it's really easy to remember, but with modifiers to the die roll. You know, something extremely difficult might be -6. Something pretty darn difficult might be -4. If it's really hard, -2, stuff like that. But if you have a D4 and you have a -6, you think there's no chance I can succeed, but you could roll a 4 and then a 4 and then another 4, and you can, and I've seen it happen, certainly enough, that you could sit there and get what we call an extraordinary success, a raise in Savage Worlds, even with these penalties and the worst die type. So there's that excitement of, I at least have a chance here, and everything. And I think one of the coolest things that Shane had when he designed the system, and this is something we took from Deadlands, which in Deadlands, it was a little bit more fitting to the setting, that Initiative used a deck of cards. And it seemed setting resistant. But then as he played with it, and we worked it out when working in the game, using a deck of cards for Initiative is actually great in every way, because there's never a tie. It doesn't matter. I mean, even if you're rolling a D20, I think I figured it up. If you have like 5 players and a GM who's only handling like 1 NPC, you still have something like a 18 to 20% chance every turn, every time you roll, that somebody's going to end up tying. Because modifiers are flat and stuff like that. Deck of cards, you never have that, because it's ace down to deuce, and then it's determined by suit who's going to go. And by using that, we're also can have what we call dynamic initiative instead of cyclical. So we can take advantage of the fact that you can deal the cards every turn. So what that means is you don't necessarily go first at every action. And if you go last, you might go first the next round. And there are tactics in Savage Worlds where you can take advantage of that. You can do something if you go last that if you go faster the next time will set you up to have more effectiveness. And but the real key to it is Initiative is typically the most boring kind of part of most games. You're just figuring it out to figure out the cycle. But what we have is we keep the jokers in the deck. And when the jokers come up, that not only tells you when to reshuffle all the cards and restart, but whoever gets the joker gets a +2 bonus to all their actions and damage, and can go and even interrupt another character without a roll at any time during the round. So that joker coming up, and it's going to come up because it's got to, eventually you're going to run out of cards, there's an exciting dynamic, and even building tension in Initiative as, when's it going to come up? When is it going to come up? And when it does, I mean, it's exciting because it can happen for the players, and it can also happen for the GM. And suddenly the bad guys get a second wind and a second chance, when you thought you might have had the adventure made. But making mechanics like that fun and putting that in, I think that's one aspect of Savage Worlds that really is what made it as popular as it's been for 15 years now.
So is that just a standard deck of playing cards plus jokers?
Yeah, regular play set of playing cards plus jokers. We've done a few theme decks ourselves for people who, because a lot of the fans and players love having theme decks, and a lot of them do their own. The other thing is it's a system that's really designed to be kind of modular in what you do. We, taking from Deadlands that have been done, the core rulebook has a thing called setting rules in it. And setting rules discuss those rules that make each game feel unique. Most games you need rules for handling damage, how to resolve skill tests, things like that. But there's probably 5% or so of the rules that really give a game its certain flavor, whether it's gritty damage or high adventure, things like that. And that's one of the aspects of Savage Worlds that's cool as well, is you can adjust the game to get a specific feel pretty easily. And so what's great is we have a lot of fans out there that have created their own settings, their own conversions. I mean, we have people at conventions, and there have been games of Savage Willy Wonka. I myself run a sci-fi original movie based game with setting rules based on if you were in a sci-fi movie.
Does that mean bad special effects?
It does. It does mean bad special effects. And there is actually rules in there where players can spend what we call bennies, short for benefits. It's the meta mechanic to be able to re-roll or reduce damage if your character's hit. But in my sci-fi original movie settings, you can actually spend a benny to adjust the scene so that it has more focus on your actor playing the character. Because that's another aspect of that game that I run. You're not only playing the character, you also have the actor who is playing that character. And they're all actors from sci-fi original movies, like Dean Cain and Casper Van Dien and John Rhys-Davies. Jaleel White is one of the favorites, the actor who played Urkel on Family Matters.
Yeah. So do you stat out? Do you stat out the actors?
I stat out. The stats are set for the characters, but then they have pictures of the actors who are playing them. But the actors are awesome because they are playing their characters and they are in their characters in the moment. The meta mechanic is where you step outside of it and you're able to spend a penny to say, hey, could there be this in this scene so my actor gets a better shot out of this or something like that. But it's actually a pretty easy thing for me to do because the characters in a sci-fi original movie are so cookie cutter in a sense that I have 2 sheriff characters, 2 deputy sheriffs that are partners. And I have 2 trackers that are also work together. And I have 2 scientists. Now my scientists are designed that they have a rivalry with each other. One is the young upstart scientist who uses everything new age. And the other one is like John Rhys-Davies as the old scientist who all the old stuff is great. And they have a rivalry with each other. All of these character stats are exactly the same because that's how they're written. Badly written. This is what scientists do. It doesn't matter that one uses high tech or one uses low tech. They have the exact same skills. They have the exact same abilities. The rivalry is just with the other character. The deputy sheriffs, they're 2-dimensional kind of deputy sheriffs. They all have a little drama to them. They have that drama that goes into any sci-fi movie. The deputy sheriffs have a secret that they're in a relationship together. That's Dean Cain and actually Tiffany, the 80s pop star, plays his partner and secret love interest. And then the trackers both have very similar things of having a vow to never give up on a hunt. The kind of things that are that drive those kind of movies. And
I'm envisioning the sequel being Netflix original series and movies now.
Yes,
might be a little harder for you though because the writing's better and they maybe get a little bit higher caliber actors.
Well, I think if Netflix did it as a series, they would play to all those tropes as well because they would be good at that. They would probably get better actors to play actors who are more of that caliber. But I've actually run it. It was so popular. So the name of my scenario that I run is Arctigator versus Crocosharkosaurus. And it has been so popular that I do, in fact, have a sequel to it now that's called Arctigator Rex versus Robo-Crocosharkosaurus.
And where are you running these games? Are these home games? Do you run them online, cons?
These are ones that I just did for conventions. So Shane Hensley, the big boss at Pinnacle and original creator of Deadlands and Savage Worlds and everything, is a huge fan of sharks. He's really a big fan of sharks and everything like that. So when Sharknado came out, his comments were all about he may start a new religion. You know, this may be his thing. And he loved it so much. So we went to Gen Con that year. I decided to make a sci-fi original movie game because we were going to have a bunch of Pinnacle folks in one location, which rarely happens because we're all over the U.S. And I decided to run that game for him. And everybody had such a great time. And then I started just saying, well, you know, I'll take it to a conventions. Well, then convention after convention, it got asked for. And this past year, actually, at ChupacabraCon, we ran it as a celebrity game where people could donate for charity. And we ended up raising, I forget, over 1,000, hundreds of dollars at least in one 4-hour game for the charity there of, you know, watching these people play these over-the-top characters.
It sounds great. So
but
apparently
the other thing you can do with Savage Worlds
mention together in a few months, I believe. So I saw on your site your convention schedule, and I'll be at Unplugged as well.
Oh yeah, I'm excited about Unplugged. I'm thrilled for that. Yeah, I'm thinking for Unplugged. I'm actually thinking I may have set up and bring a Flash Gordon scenario. Because that's our next big release for Savage Worlds. We'll be doing the Kickstarter for that either end of this month or sometime in the 1st of October. So we've got the Flash Gordon RPG. It's been awesome to work on, you know, to do like the old, you know, comic strips, the original Alex Raymond art. I mean, we had the full King Features line to use to make the RPG from. It's fantastic.
I think that's how I got introduced to you because I was talking to Scott, who's one of the writers.
Yeah, Scott Woodard is our writer for it, and he also did the Six Gun RPG that we did as well, and I think that's the first time that I worked with Scott that we worked. Yeah, we worked on Six Gun, and then we started, you know, working on Flash Gordon, and it's been a blast.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Like we had talked a little bit, me and Scott talked a little bit about that. And like for me, like Flash Gordon is the cheesy 80s movie.
Yeah.
But I love that movie.
The neat thing about it is, you know, we basically have the comics. And a lot of people ask, well, does that mean you're going to have any of the movie stuff in it? And it goes, well, it's odd. If you actually go back and look at the comic strips, their scene breakdowns for the movie. And I think that's kind of what, you know, they did when they made the movie is they decided to make it a campy version, of course, but that's just how they presented these scenes that are right out of it. I mean, there is the scene in the comics of Voltan up there, you know, screaming, "Die, my Hawkmen," and, you know, various other things. That the only aspect that I think they totally made up for the movie was Clytus. Clytus was original for the movie. Even Kala is in the comics, although they changed the character from male to female. General Kala did exist in the comics, but was male in the original comics, but did exist. But Clytus is the only one. But fans don't have to be too bad. There is a gold-masked black robe head of Ming's psionic secret police still in the book.
Yeah, I have to backtrack a little bit because also the cartoon, that's my other inspiration for Flash Gordon. But you know, back then, you know, I was a kid when all that stuff came out, so it was so awesome. How long you guys have been working on the Flash Gordon?
Honestly, it's been Well, we announced it, I think, 2 years ago is when we announced it. And then we kicked in. Scott and I actually sat down at Gen Con. We announced it, had a bit of a meeting there on it, talking about it. And then he started going through, because, I mean, there's, I think, 5 huge volumes of the comics to go through that King Features provided us, to be able to use for reference. And I mean, I got to think that first part of the year was just Scott getting through all that information that they provided. I mean, the comic strip went on for decades and decades, and so there was a lot of that, and then started working of condensing that down to how best it would work for an RPG, where we were going to put it, how we were going to set up the, where we would start basically the RPG time-wise, and in such a way, because when you're doing a licensed RPG like that, what you want to be careful of is having those main characters overshadow the heroes. That can happen all too often. So it's real simple for us. I mean, it didn't take us long other than getting together to choose. There is a point where Flash has become king of one of the nations of Mongo. He's still there, but he's also king of actually the underground nation at that point. So it's a way to have him there, but the heroes still get to go out and be heroes,
We just had our first session of a new Star Wars game, and I think we have to have a discussion with our GM about that. And I get it, like the worlds are so rich and there's so much depth, and I can understand as a GM wanting to play with them, but at a certain point you have to remember you're still playing a game, and it's about the players, not about the heroes that already exist in those settings.
Yeah, it's a tricky tightrope to balance there, and I mean, obviously we have to stat out those characters. We have to do that. They're going to be there, but it's a question. When we did, so we did Lonkmar, Fritz Lieber's Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser. We did the books for that, which was a dream for me, because here I am getting to make a Savage Worlds version of a setting that was part of the inspiration for Dungeons and Dragons. I mean, it's like going back to the beginning almost, remembering these guys were actually in the first Deity and Demigods before they got pulled, and then then TSR went back and got the license for it and all that stuff. But I mean, we looked at it and it's like, well, there's such a long history across the books of Fafhrd and the Grey Mouser going from when they're very young to kind of in their prime to older, and ended up that we decided, the best thing to do was stat them at like 3 different levels. So players can play at any point. You might run into them at any point that you want to, but the nice thing about Lonkmar, the city, is there are so many stories in there. There's things going on that even in Lieber stories that you were sitting there looking at going, okay, there's something going on behind the scenes here that even Fafhrd and the Mouser aren't connected to. So I made it real easy to do that.
That reminds me of one of my favorite quotes from Noah Atweiler, Spoonie Bard, and that is, if you stat it, they will kill it.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, that did kind of influence that, because we have Ningable and Shilba, the 2 wizards that are the mentors to Fafhrd and the Mouser. And we talked about statting them, and I absolutely said there's no way we can stat these characters because they are without stats, and it's like they are just, they're things to hang the plot on. They're almost part of the scenery that you get to interact with. And so we're like, yep, no, we can't stat these. We will discuss how you play them, how you interact them with the whispering, sibilant voice to, from the darkness, and a bit like that. But it's a case of no, these characters, they've expanded beyond. They're as close as you're getting to interacting with gods in that world.
And even if you look at AD&D and the original D&D, as soon as they put stats to the gods, what do the players want to do?
Yep, let's go kill them. Yeah.
Can't be stopped. So we are right around the halfway mark where we like to do our roll call and see where people are hailing from today.
Okay.
So guys, if you want to kick that off. Also, Clint, you wear multiple different hats. You know, you're over there with Pinnacle handling Savage Worlds. You also have your own company with a gaming table. So I want to delve into that a little bit as well. After we get started with the roll call. So we've got Lopez Island, Washington with AJ. We have Kelsey in Texas. We got Todd in Dallas. We got Patrick in Sweden. Lincoln's in Sweden as well. Virgilio, Utah. We've got Truemate in Wales. Zaref Gaming is in New Mexico. Fraginator is in Washington. We got Jose in Tampa. Lincoln, Nebraska in the house with John. Thomas is in Norway. We also have Mr. Rob's Cleaning Service in Oregon. We got Ghetto Stabulous in Louisiana. Kyle Ellis is somewheres under the rainbow. We've got Ben in New Brunswick. We've got Mexico in the house with Plata 089. Wisconsin with Scott. Lex Key is in the Netherlands. Zombie Dave is in Wichita, Kansas. So we got people, hailing from all over the place today, which is always awesome. So how do you go from Savage Worlds to gaming tables?
You wait way too long to do it. So like I said, Savage Worlds have been out for like 15 years, and my wife and I both were working on it, way back before it, originally came out. And I've been a freelancer, and I had done stuff for Pinnacle before that, going back, 5 more years or so. And but my main job and my primary job for most of my life has been in furniture manufacturing. I'm in North Carolina. I'm based out of, at least right now, I'm based out of Hickory, North Carolina. And I tell people between Hickory, North Carolina and High Point, North Carolina, about 40% of the furniture is made in the United States. It is the furniture capital of the U.S. And I am a 3rd generation furniture manufacturer, going back with my grandfather, who started his own business after working for a company here. My father worked for him, then went out and started his own business. And I worked for him for years, working my way up through all the different steps of the company before about 2.5 years ago, suddenly I had my peanut butter and chocolate moment, realizing I should combine the two things that I know and I love about. Furniture manufacturing and gaming, and so I started working out designs. And I think the first thing that came to me was the realization that at that time there was nobody in the game table business who was actually part of the furniture industry. They were woodworkers, they were craftsmen, they did all this, they made it on their own, but they weren't actually being made out of a furniture factory with all the advantages that allows. There were month-long waits. The price was really high. It was worth it for the hand craftsmanship and the options they allowed. So I kind of came back to the idea that there were probably people out there who had reached the point in their life, gamers, who wanted something that wasn't just another IKEA table. They wanted a nice dining table, but they'd like it to be something that could also be their gaming table. But otherwise, 7 days a week, it would be a dining table and it would be usable as such. Game night is typically 1 night a week. Some lucky folks get more than that, but still 7 days a week, it's got to be usable for a normal job. So I went through my designs, thinking about ways to do it. And eventually I went to work with, people I know in the industry. I sourced a fabric from a upholsterer supplier. that felt great and has high durability and stain resistance. And I took my designs to a factory that I've worked with for 20 plus years, and they were able to transition that to be able to handle production for us. So now I end up that I've got 5 pieces in our line, 5 options, from dining, kitchen, coffee tables, Tablezilla. That was, I think, the big one there. It's at the end, it's 8 feet long and nearly 5 feet wide. And then the newest one we did was called the, I think we discussed a little bit, was the streamer, where last year I realized that there are a lot of people doing tabletop game streaming. And as you probably know, there is a lot of money behind the camera. There are thousands of dollars that can be spent back there in video production, sound quality, and everything like that. But you know, the viewer is only seeing what's in front of the camera. So I thought, why not make it easy for those guys to have something that was going to look great in front of the camera and also be functional? So I designed the streamer for that, which is a trapezoidal shape table. So a camera in the front, none of the players block the sight lines of anybody. And I worked with Ivan Van Norman, who was there that night with us. I know Ivan for years. His company Hunter's Books and Pinnacle both use the same distributor fulfillment. So we've been neighbors at Gen Con every year. And I talked to him about some of the design criteria, and Ivan was very cool. And he helped me out, gave me a bit of advice. Of course, he also said that he wanted the first one. I said, I think I can make that happen. So that's the table he currently uses on Game the Game, and that they use for the Celebrity D&D episodes that they put out on Geek and Sundry.
So as you saw, I was showing off some of the pictures. Some of the people are checking them out. And yes, folks, they are expensive because furniture is expensive. And as with anything, as you add more quality and multiple functions, the price is obviously going to go up. But that is nice that they come, it can serve the function of your everyday furniture. And then, it opens up to reveal, this beautiful gaming space as well.
Well, yeah, that was my, I didn't want to go, really on the low end scale. I mean, our construction is all solid hardwood. I mean, it's not plywood. It's not anything else. I do use plywood for our inner play surface. I use some composite stuff for the top, so it's equally balanced. But then again, we also put in an aluminum rail support system inside the wood to ensure that it, fights warping or bending or anything like that. But I mean, the rest of it, it's solid mahogany. We use a farm-raised sustainable variety. It's great for hardwoods. But I figure, what I tell people is, my pricing, I said, go out and look at buying yourself a mahogany dining room table from North Carolina. You're probably looking at the same price, if not lower. But with ours, you can take the top off, and you got a game table for game night too. Another advantage I've determined with ours is, if you had bought that mahogany dining room table and you did something to mess up the top, with ours, you can at least buy a new top and you don't have a ruined table.
And some of the comments are funny. I don't know. Have you played on a wobbly table? It sucks. Someone else, that was Kyle, and then TrueMate. Oh, cool. He made the Geek and Sundry table. #NerdCred. So yeah, and everyone's in a different place in their life, and if you can afford the luxury of having a custom game table, then that's awesome.
Right.
So next time I'm in the market for a dining room table, I'll definitely consider that and take a look. But I have priced furniture, and I've bought enough furniture. I've owned a couple houses now, so it's never cheap. That is for sure.
Yeah. And, we try to make it easy on folks. I mean, we let people choose the finish. We have 4 finishes and 7 fabrics. You can choose the color you want, and we're going to make it for you. I mean, the advantage I said about the advantage of having a factory is I don't have a backlog. I'll really never have a backlog to wait. It takes me 16 weeks to make a table, and that's it. That's the wait, 16 weeks. So what we tend to do is, folks, you put down a deposit for a table, you have 16 weeks to worry about the balance on it. So it's possible to stretch it out for a bit.
Excellent. So I guess we were talking off air. You debuted your tables at 2015. You said Gen Con.
Yeah, we showed the. We started out with just the dining table. I didn't have. I had one, option: the dining room table with the full cover top that went on top of it. That was the other thing about our tops is we make sure they go all the way over the play ledge to the edge of it, so it's not just an insert. So you spill something on it, it goes off the side. It doesn't go to the interior. But we showed the prototype there, the very first one, just before we went on Kickstarter. We also filmed our Kickstarter video there because I know the guys that do with Zombie Orpheus and Dead Gentlemen. And so our Kickstarter video is a little rough now looking back 2 years later, but we actually have the guys from the gamers playing at our game table. And I have my daughter, one of my daughters is playing with them. The other is actually the GM of the game. Yeah, both of my girls have actually been running. Both of my daughters ran con games at 9 years old. Not ran games, ran convention games at 9 years old. So they were pretty comfortable, doing that. But I thought it was a thrill. Like I said, I've known those guys for a long time, and we worked it out. They were willing to come in before the hall opened to come in and film that for us, which was really great. And
I was like 40 when I ran my first con game.
Really?
It's actually more recent.
Well, it's never too early and it's never too late. That's what I tell people.
Well, the interesting thing about doing what we do is we do get to interact with a lot of different people from different walks of life from all over the world. And one of the things that we love hearing is when people tell us that, they're just coming back to gaming. They haven't gamed in 20 years and they're coming back. And, people that are more in our age demographic who, stopped gaming to become an adult. And now for whatever reason, gaming is coming back into their life.
Yeah.
And let's face it, like of all the things we could be spending our free time doing, like this is an amazing hobby where we get to, create new worlds and new stories with each other instead of sitting around watching TV, watching stories that other people have created, or spending our nights at the bar or whatever. There is no better way to spend your time, in my opinion. Well, maybe unless you're curing cancer or something, but
Well, okay, yeah. Well, even people that work on curing cancer need to have a break and release. It's the well-known fact that you got to recharge your mind just like you got to recharge your body. And what you talked about, I mean, it's like the main key of that was creating your own stories. And when you put your brain into creation mode, and especially for role-playing games where you're effectively doing that for hours at a time, almost constantly, it really helps build up those pathways and opening your mind to do stuff. So maybe someday the person who does cure cancer will, be a gamer. And I don't know that that'll necessarily be the cause of it, but I don't think it'll hurt it.
Could very well. And the hobby is growing so fast. Like we kind of touched on it in the very beginning with all the different things on YouTube and Twitch, right, that people have to plug into nowadays. You're so much so now you're even building furniture around that.
Right. Well, I guess. I mean, I put design work into it, primarily because, like I said, I knew a bunch of the folks that were doing it, and it's not something I expect that we'll, make a career out of selling that table. It would be nice, but I know that it's helping the hobby. I mean, that's it. Like you said, this is building the hobby more than anything has in years, getting out there. And if in some small way we can do something to make that easier on folks, to help them out to do that, I'm behind it. And so that's what I, went into when I started designing that.
I mean, look at Wizards of the Coast now. They're streaming on Twitch 5 days a week.
Yeah. And I mean, you look at, besides Geek and Sundry, Hyper RPG, which is in Seattle and LA now, basically able to switch between two studios, and most of their content is role-playing games of some way, shape, or form. I mean, their BattleTech miniature game includes role-playing in it, you know, because that's what they're focused on. And they do the game. My guys at my friends at Zombie Orpheus, they do their, you know, metaverse game there. And you've got the Hyper RPG is now, you know, hooked up with Penny Arcade. So they do acquisitions incorporated the C Team. They show that. I mean, it's just amazing. And I mean, it's kind of, you know, frustrating that there are all these options out there that you can't watch all of them. You know, some are so good.
Yeah, we need a studio on the East Coast. I have to figure out how to make that happen now.
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my God. I watched the first episode of the second season of Wild Cards, which is the Deadlands game that Saving Throw does. It's great, you know. Jordan and Megan and I got to meet them and Dom and Jordan too at the same party we met at, and talked to them about it. And I'm like, I was so excited about it. And then I look at their time frame, and it's like, yeah, we're gonna run from, you know, it's from 7 to 10. And I'm like, okay, so that's 10 till 1 a.m. on the East Coast. It's like, that's rough, guys. It's rough, but it's so exciting because you get to interact as well as part of Twitch chat and that kind of thing. And that's a great aspect of that, to just be able to, you know, to be interactive and toss things in and help out, you know.
Twitch and live streaming in general now kind of runs the gambit from, okay, we're Maze Arcana inviting you in to watch our home game. We don't want any interaction with the chat, and almost like it doesn't exist, to Encounter Roleplay, where they do these hunger style games where, right, you know, where the chat actually affects what's going on in the game.
Yeah,
I think that C Team does the same thing, but I think Encounter Roleplay actually helped them build that out from what they were already doing. I could be mistaken, but I'm pretty sure I heard that somewhere. So, you know, the way games are happening in this day and age just blows my mind to think about it. When I think back to, you know, 16-year-old Nerdarchy Dave, and, you know, who barely would even talk about role-playing games outside of his circle of friends that he played with, to, you know, where it's this worldwide event and people are actually watching this stuff as entertainment. It's nuts.
You know, so, the neat thing about it to me is the whole interactive aspect, though. I mean, yeah, I can understand we're going to play our game, you know, we want to keep it as pure as possible. So, you know, there's a chat window active, but there's no interactive aspects to it. But with the Saving Throw show guys, it's like, because they do interactive and they allow things to, it's not purely changing things so much. It's buying, like for Savage Worlds terms, like effectively buying bennies or re-rolls and things like that, or, you know, getting the whole group to perform a toast in the middle of the game. I mean, it's fun stuff like that. But I just saw when I just came back from Dragon Con, but at the beginning, I saw where they had posted on Twitter that Saving Throw show, between Wild Cards and I'm not sure what the other show is, they had raised over $1,800 for Hurricane Harvey relief, and it's part because they had that already there. They had that already in set, and they just, you know, take that money and send it straight off to help other people. And I'm like, you know, that's awesome, because that is a big part of gaming community, is helping each other. You know, in the end, we're all kind of we're all a family. It's, people talk about, you know, I tell people all the time, somebody comes up to me and tries to talk down about another game system, you know, and saying how much they love Savage Worlds more than such and such game. And my reaction tends to be, my friend wrote that game. Do you understand that? It's like, we all know each other. We're friends. It's like, you're not really, it doesn't really cut any slack with me. It's like, and why don't you play it? It's got some great stuff in it. I mean, every game has something to provide, you know?
It's a small community. And I always say, like, if I like the people playing a game, even if it's a system I don't care for, I will play the game. I may not run that game, but I'll absolutely play it and I'll have fun. I feel like it's you, the player's responsibility to find the fun in the game. And I think we just like wall ourselves off to a lot of experiences by taking that mentality of like all or nothing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's, the thing I kind of tell people is I love going to conventions and playing games. I absolutely love doing them because every game I play in with somebody I've never played with before, I learn something new about gaming. I may pick up something their GM does or one of the player does that I think that's really cool. Now, the flip side of that is sometimes what I learn is to be sure to never do something in a game because every once in a while you get somebody who's maybe just off for that day, or, occasionally, I mean, I hate it and I try to make it comfortable. You get somebody it's the first time they've ever run a game and they're really nervous and things like that. So I try to also share that the other way of, if you've done it many times, if you've run a lot of games and that, GM or whoever running the game looks kind of nervous, be sure you're the player sitting up next to him and just kind of toss him it's okay. Just roll with it. It's not gonna kill the game. Give them a little bit of support.
I have a saying, it's a little unpopular sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's just a game. That's it. So, so Zarif Gaming has mentioned a couple times, and it kind of dovetailed to what you were saying about what's able to be done with charities and stuff. He's talking about wanting to do a charity stream or do a charity game. I don't have any experience with it, but there is plenty of people out there doing them. So I would say just try and reach out to them. I don't know if you have any experience, Clint.
I've done live charity games, kind of like we talked about at conventions, where we basically do the same thing that you have on live stream of, donate to change things, adjust. Usually it's related to a meta mechanic. A lot of games have them, and it's easy to implement if a game doesn't. Even 5e has that now to an extent. It's a little bit more limited, but you don't have to limit it. You can keep it more open. But I'd say that's using a meta mechanic is easy. Providing a scale so that everybody has something that they can put in, to be effective. I know, when we ran our charity game, we had basically for, I think it was $5, you could toss in how much and get somebody a Benny, a fate chip, a reroll kind of ability. But we said like for, $20, you could go ahead and buy 5. So it was a little bit of a discount to buy 5. And eventually, because these people were so into this, I actually ran out of ones to give because they had physical representations, which I kind of liked in the live version because it actually forced the players to use them. So they cycled back through and there would be more. It just wouldn't be an overwhelming number, So that's something to keep in mind as well, is put out a max limit so the players actually use them so that they refill the pool for people to donate again. And then look at some of the people that are out there and the options they have. I know Saving Throw has many options. If you look at Hyper RPG, they do a bunch of stuff on theirs of what you can donate for various things of, altering the game as far as, what's out there to put out. I mean, you can have a thing to, I think, throw an NPC in, throw a twist into the story, add something like that.
Yeah, pretty much I agree. Like someone else has done the work. You just have to look around and figure it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And those would be the places I'd check. Look at, let's see. I'm trying to think of a show on Geek and Sundry that has that. Most of their stuff is more open-ended, though, where you can just go vote on things, like Dick and Johnson, which is hilarious. If you guys have never watched it, watch Dick and Johnson. It's fantastic. But Hyper RPG, Saving Throw Show, One Shot RPG might do that as well. I'd go look at those on Twitch and check out some of their options. And usually those guys have it where you can link, click a link in there to find, some of the games and maybe what's out that you can do with it. But just be creative. In the end, you're basically just adjusting a game mechanic. It's like tweaking any game and making your own house rules. In this case, you're just making a house rule to kind of, build up, people, being able to donate to charity. So make it as easy as possible for them and, give them something to work for. And don't be afraid to put out a high level, golden backer out there for somebody who really wants to do something and put a bunch of money in and make a big difference in some way, shape, or form. I mean, if there's a resurrect a character option for $100 or something like that, let them have that. $100 and a diamond.
$500 insta slay.
That's right.
Todd Boyd actually asked a question about your gaming table company.
Okay.
Do you have any plans to make chairs designed for gaming? Chairs designed to be comfortable when you're sitting for 5 hours straight. Maybe have pockets for holding books, papers, etc.
We actually make chairs already. We make the chairs out of the same mahogany. They're solid hardwood, so we make them out of the same mahogany we use for the tables. That way they match perfectly finish-wise. They're pretty comfortable. I will say I haven't necessarily tried one out for 5 hours straight.
You got to play test that chair.
I do know that there was an 8-hour game chair out there that was in solid wood. I haven't tested mine out for that long. I don't think I can make that long in any chair, probably. But I tell folks if it ends up being something you're not comfortable with, the seat size is actually the standard size for many seat cushions that you can buy, and then we've got the railings on the back where you could tie them off, just like you could on an outdoor piece. But I'm not probably looking at adding book holders on the side or anything like that. We don't do a lot of the add-on bells and whistles because to make our production time work, we have to pattern everything. And when we get into smaller bits like that, it gets a bit fidgety.
Not only that, too, like from the standpoint of these are supposed to look like what you would see in your dining room or your living room. You start making those kind of changes, it becomes obvious that it's something else. Yeah. I mean, and that's one of the things we went for is to make it more useful as a gaming chair. Is we definitely went with an armless version because that gives you the most room to fit people on one side. So the more people you want to have sit around the table and game, armless chairs are the way to go for that because arms just eat up a ton of room that honestly isn't very necessary when you're at a table and you can just lean on the table, Yeah. Especially our tables are designed that way with a wider ledge to make it easier to lean on. And in general, for games, you're leaning forward into the game anyway. If you're interested, at least you are. So. You heard it here first. You heard it here first, folks. Clint says, "Get rid of your arms." That's right. Disarm yourself. Overrated. It's a called shot at -2. It's not that hard. Come on, try it. But, awesome. Also, I want to mention too, there is a Kickstarter going on right now. It's already exceeded its goal. So if you're a fan of, I believe it's for Deadlands. It's an expansion. It's actually the Doomtown card game. We had licensed it out to AEG, and just this past year, it kind of worked out. AEG had it for a long period of time that we brought it back in-house with Pinnacle. We'd always had some, it'd always been kind of tricky licensing stuff. So now we're able to do the card game, but part of our Kickstarter is actually going to be able to do full Deadlands stats for things that exist in the card game and that setting. So we're actually going to be great for people that play the RPG or, people that just play the card game. And we're doing, as a matter of fact, there should be by now some new stretch goals that have been listed. I think just before we went on, I got an email saying that we would have those up in an hour or so because we blew past in a day, everything we had already had listed for stretch goals.
Doomtown has a huge fan base. It's really popular, and it's excited to see that those people have stuck around.
So, are you going to be running any games at PAX Unplugged?
I don't have any games planned to run. Right now, I'm thinking I usually try to take one game with me just to have it in case, we run into people and have a pickup game. At this point, I'm thinking I may pull together a Flash Gordon game because we will be having that Kickstarter should have been started and possibly completed by the time we get to PAX Unplugged. So I believe that'll be on a lot of people's mind, and chance to play a Hawkman or Lionman or any of the races of Mongo will probably be fun. It's also great because it's like HeroClix exists to provide me with all the Hawkman miniatures I ever want. It's great. So I will probably set up something like that, but generally, when we're at PAX Unplugged, we're going to be there primarily with the game tables and working the booth there. Now, I do know that Studio 2, who as our fulfillment, and then also, as I mentioned, handles Ivan stuff for Hunter's Books, will be at PAX Unplugged this year. So they're going to be showing up. So if you're interested in anything Savage Worlds, like Savage Rifts, which is out in print now, any of the variety of settings we have, from Deadlands Noir, we did, which was actually our first Kickstarter, Last Parsec for Sci-Fi, Lonkmar we talked about. We've put out so many things. The original setting I actually wrote for Savage Worlds was Necessary Evil. It was our super hero setting, except you actually play the super villains. We have that, and we have the prequel to it. We call Necessary Evil 2 Breakout, which is kind of like Batman's No Man's Land meets Escape from New York. You're actually the villains who have been trapped in a force field on Manhattan, and you have to, the street level villains, not the kind of four color villains, and you have to figure out how to escape when everybody is creating their own factions on the island, because the aliens just kind of seal it up and use it as kind of their own little aquarium, a terrarium, to watch what happens to everyone.
So of all the things you said right now, here's what I heard. You're gonna have this space with these gorgeous gaming tables in it, and possibly a Flash Gordon game to run.
Possibly, yes. As well as somewhere else will be the space that has places to pick up other Savage World stuff. But yes, possibly the Flash Gordon game. If I don't have time to get that all set up, I will probably pick up one of my my sci-fi games, because those are always good to fall back on. With the Arctigator and Croco Sharkosaurus, that's always a blast, And of course, one of my evil guys in it is played by Eric Roberts, because Eric Roberts is always the bad guy.
Pretty much. Except for, wasn't he in Best of the Best?
Yes, he was.
He was not a bad guy.
He was not.
Screw up, maybe.
Yeah. He was probably, he probably in his head was playing a bad guy pretending to be a good guy.
Oh, there you go.
That's what I think.
Well, if you do decide to run some Flash Gordon, I would love to get on that list and check out some Savage Worlds.
All right, well, come by, just come by the Carolina Game Tables booth at some point in time, and we'll figure out if I've got everything set up, and maybe we'll work out a time to put that down and get that going. Who knows? Maybe we'll just try and set up a game right there in the booth. Let folks watch us play.
That's what I'm talking about. They might as well see the tables in action.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on, Clint. I want to thank everyone for hanging out in the chat with us today. It's been a blast. I'm looking forward to getting to hang out with you again at PAX Unplugged. And I'm kind of new to conventions, so this is kind of the cool thing for me, is actually getting to meet all these people in person. So we will, Nerdarchy will be booth bearding for Open Legend Games, so it should be a blast. So with that, guys, until next time, stay nerdy. Started at the dungeon. It was just a different play style, and everything we did, you did in a bubble. Yeah. The back in both of our days, I'm sure the Caves of Chaos were inside this dome,
and there was a keep outside that dome, you know, on this place. But out in the borderlands, there was nothing else except the caves of chaos and that little keep. And you really didn't have to worry about it, because all the keep was where you went to get more stuff to go back in to the caves
or sell your stuff. And damn it, that's all we needed back then.
That's right. That's right. Get off my dice, kids today.
So, kind of moving on, Savage Worlds, for someone who hasn't played it, definitely interested. I'm always interested in experiencing new RPGs. I actually backed the Savage Rifts, and I just haven't delved into it. There's always more games than I have time. So what do you think the selling points are for Savage Worlds?
Well, we always use the tagline "Fast, Furious, Fun" for Savage Worlds, trying to keep things moving. But one of the keys is really that last one, is trying to keep the game fun and enjoyable. One of the things about Savage Worlds that I like, that we kind of try to stay focused on, is there are two main sections to what we're playing. It's a role-playing game. So there's role-playing and there is a game involved. There are some game aspects to it. The point is, the mechanics, people talk about how they can't be immersive and they might bring you out or whatever. That's a lot more forgivable if those mechanics are fun. So one of the things with Savage Worlds that we have is our dice ace, or use another term, they explode. So if you roll the highest on a die, you re-roll and add again. So every time you roll the dice, there's a chance of rolling something extraordinary. Or even if you have, because all of our traits, that's both attributes and skills, are rated in die types from D4 to D12. And generally our target number, it was kind of marvelous, really. It was my younger daughter's 16th birthday, and two of the kids had shown up early, and they were in my living room, and I came in carrying stuff for the party, and I went and set it down in the kitchen, and I walk around, and I walk inside, and there's a boy in her high school who is running a Savage World Star Wars game, and there's a girl who is one of her best friends who is playing in that game as well, and is getting ready to run a D&D 5e game herself, which is awesome. I love seeing more women coming into gaming, because I've gotten used to playing role playing with women for years. It seems weird not to me, but I'm sitting there, and they're 16-year-olds, they're high school students, and I walk in, and the conversation that they're having is about how much combat to actually put into the game so it doesn't detract from the story. And the boy who is getting ready to play in this other girl's game is saying, 16-year-old boy in high school is saying that it doesn't really matter so much to him. He'll play whatever kind of support character the group needs, because he's more interested in just role-playing his character than killing stuff in combat. And I'm looking at these kids going, not only are you role-playing and gaming and you're interacting with multiple systems, because most of us in that time we had one system that we played until we found a different one. You're getting all these different experiences playing different systems, but you're having conversations most role players don't have till they get into their 20s. I mean, you're already talking about story and and balancing combat and story, and being more interested in role playing your character than how many orcs you can fit in a 10 by 10 room, and stuff like that. Now it was thrilling to be that fly on the wall and hear that. And a big part of it, we mentioned that last night, but especially since it was a Geek and Sundry party, was the girl was talking about how part of her inspiration came from a D&D show that she was watching, a live stream show that she watched or on YouTube. And I'm not familiar which one it was. I think Adventure Zone or something. One of my girls was telling me. Anyway, and the boy is sitting there asking, talking to her about, well, have you ever seen Titan's Grave, Will Wheaton's RPG show? And she's like, no. And he goes on to mention, well, it has Laura Bailey from Critical Role in it. And the girl legitimately goes, "From what?" I'm like, wait, we have so much out there to draw from. I mean, these kids aren't even, it's not even the biggest names out there and on, live playing stuff. It's like all this other stuff that are impacting, these kids. I mean, it doesn't matter what you're doing, how many viewership you've got on your show, you're probably out there impacting kids and they're playing better games, That's awesome.
That part is a little scary because we kind of aim for a PG-13-ish, and it's gotten a little bit better since one of our members has kind of gone his own way, but which was my brother, and me and him tend to kind of delve into more of the adult stuff and use more adult language. But we were at a gaming convention, and a lot of these guys have probably have heard me tell this story, but when there was an 11-year-old kid that's like, I watch your stuff, and I was like, wow. So like that going forward kind of does color how we do things, and we try and go, well, maybe we should change things up a little bit and taking that into consideration. And and I'm looking at the father going, you let him watch our stuff. I can't believe you. You're horrible.
Yeah. Well, that's a consideration Pinnacle's always kind of had in its stuff. And we have basically our soft rule is that all of our settings and all of our stuff, we try to keep it PG-13. And it's not because you can't run any of our settings with more adult themes, but it's a case of, if you're an adult, you already know how to add that. For kids, they can pick it up and they're not being inundated with it. It's not, right in the face. But, it's like, having, raised, two girls now myself. And it's one thing, we know as parents, and I think most parents out there know, is there's nothing you can really say in front of kids that they haven't already heard on a school bus, and it's just a matter of letting them know how to deal with the words they hear and, some of the stuff that goes on with. So every once in a while, you might flub up in front of a kid, but you still, they, as long as they're good kids, and generally gaming kids are great kids, I think you'd understand.
When you're rolling funny shaped dice or pulling cards, you don't have time for that other stuff.
Yeah, that's true.
In my household, I always say the kids should learn that stuff where they're supposed to, on the playground.
Right.
Not for me.
Yeah. Mine definitely learned it on the bus. They informed us of where you sit on the school bus, so you could stay away from the kids. The kids in the back of the bus are, the ones that we'll just sit as close to the front as we can, because back there's a whole different language going on. Yeah.
But going back to, kids are just so much more savvy nowadays. When it comes to gaming, well, just in general, they just have so much information at their fingertips. And my oldest is actually 16, and he games with us. He still isn't really much of a role player, but I just know from my personal experience that, one, like listening to you talk and some of where some of the other kids are now, is they're light years beyond where we were at that age, or me personally, because at that point it's like you said, it's like, how many orcs can you fit in a 10x10 room? And you're just kicking indoors. There was no getting to the dungeon. Guys, they're from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds, and today I'm hanging out with Clint Black of Carolina Gaming Tables, as well as you're also the brand manager over at Pinnacle for Savage Worlds.
I'm the Core Rules brand manager. Yes. Hold on. When Wonder Woman arrived.
Happens. These are the things that happen when we go live.
Yeah, of course. It only happens. Yeah, I'm so the Core Rules brand manager kind of sounds odd, because most people are brand managers over a line on a setting. So my brand is actually the rules. So what I do is I oversee the core rule books when we work on them. And then the companion books that we do that are basically setting books to help people build their own settings. like the Fantasy Companion, Horror Companion. We've done a Sci-Fi Companion and Superpowers Companion. But then I also work on all the rules in all the other books that we put out there to ensure that they merge seamlessly with our core rule book. So in a way, I get to work on every book we put out there. It's kind of a dream job.
Nice. So there's no danger of getting bored. You're constantly having new things, new toys to play with. So I guess we'll go into a little bit of background here. I met you at Gen Con. We were both at the Geek and Sundry party. And we had some really good conversations. You introduced yourself, and we were talking about Savage Worlds, and I was just like I was saying before we got started here. That's one of the ones that are on my list of to-play games that I haven't gotten around to. But the thing that actually really stood out to me about our conversation was we're actually talking about kids and teens and playing role-playing games. And you were telling me about, I don't know if it was a birthday party or party something for one of your children, I believe your daughter maybe.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of like there, fly on the wall style, listening to the kids talk and interact with each other, and they're talking about gaming.
Yeah, it was